Hello, welcome to the next in our series of fireside chats, and it's a great joy to be joined today by the Reverends Jenny and Tony Wicking. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
We're here in the workplace, appropriately numbered and socially distanced, and Jenny and Tony, of course, being from the same household, don't have to have quite the same distance between them, and we'll have our masks off too for the purposes of this interview. As per those exceptions, as it would be rather unedifying if we tried to chat through our masks. And you might have noticed in the service the beautiful masks we're wearing made at Jenny's own hand, so thank you, Jenny, for that ministry to us. And thank you also for your wonderful homily today. I love that passage. It's a wonderful text, isn't it? There's so much in it, and I love the Canaanite woman preaching the gospel to Jesus.
Yes.
And he really is challenged, I think, by her sense of identity and her sense of entitlement to grace, almost, even in her humility, as you drew out for us. And he's challenged to look past some of the obstacles or preconceptions of his moment in history and his culture to see what that might demand of him in terms of his ministry to the Gentiles. What do you think, how do we translate that into our ministry settings? What are some of the barriers, preconceptions, obstacles that we need to learn to look past, that we need to be challenged by the grace of the gospel to see beyond?
I think the biggest challenge is what other people will think of us. And Dave will know, because Dave's taking the video here, there's a woman in Currumbara, and she really challenged us because she came to do a drama class, and her life was fairly broken, and she challenged me whether I'm going to listen to people who are thinking she's not the right sort of person to be connected with, or am I going to connect with her? Yeah. And I think the first thing in this gospel message is acknowledging our own fear of being different and not being liked or respected for what we have said. And we're stepping out of the norm, just like Jesus had to step out. We have to step out of what's our known space, our balance. And so I find that for us, the barriers often is ourselves and our own understanding of our relationship with Jesus. Because we have these conversations, Tony and I, and for me about grace. And so when we know that love of God, when we've been impacted by that love of God, it doesn't mean we don't follow the law. Our lives are not accountable. We're actually more accountable because we're in love with this God who we want to honour. We want to honour this love. And so, and to watch this woman, her life unfolds now, where she's teaching, the one I was talking about before, and her life is falling into place. Yeah. And so once we know that love of God, which is that it only takes a spark song I like, it changes us. Yeah. And I think often that's a scary place to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're different.
Yeah.
We become ourselves.
No, that's a great example. Thank you. I love that kind of the barriers often are here that we have to deal with first and challenge first. Yeah.
I sort of tend to think in a similar vein is that I think, I think we're going to look at what are the barriers within ourselves. And often my perception is that people in church are quite happy to accept people who are like them. And although we often speak about the gospel for all people and being open to other people, the reality I've seen is so often that we do put up our own barriers when somebody different comes amongst us. Yeah. And yet these are probably the very people who are crying out, like the Canaanite woman, just wanting something. Yes. And unconsciously we knock them back and we just leave them, and that's, for me, I think it's trying to overcome that barrier, that sense that, well, okay, they may be different to us, but they are still important in God's eyes.
Yeah, but deep-seated human capacity to other people that we're all prone to, I think, and there's something just in the kind of tenacity of her hunger.
Yes.
Like, no, I'm not going to be othered.
I'm not going to be othered. That's it, exactly. Yeah. But she doesn't, in this, she doesn't take offence.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what I sort of took from that. She doesn't say, well, I'm going to become a Jewish woman. She says, I'm a Gentile. Yeah. And she says, yes, this is who I am. Yeah. But give me a crumb.
I am who I am.
I am who I am, and give me a crumb, and that's enough for me.
Yeah, that's nice.
And often in when we're who we are, we want more than what we're entitled to.
Sure. Yeah. You guys are recently married. It was my great honour and privilege to be involved in that back in February. Boy, that seems like a long time ago in some ways, but it's a very short time. Yeah. I'm sure for you two. And what's it like now that you're priests in charge together in the wonderful historic parish of Yarram? Yeah, with Port Albert and Tarraville there. You're exercising ministry jointly or together that you've exercised independently previously. Yeah. Tell us what that's like for you.
Lots of conversations.
What's the honest answer?
It's frustrating. it's challenging, but it's also wonderful. It really is. Jenny and I come from completely different backgrounds. We've got completely different viewing points. We've got completely different understandings of church, I think, in a lot of ways. And we're having to talk our way through things. And Jenny's got a whole lot of skills that I don't have, and the other way around. And so we're really trying to merge and not so much merge, but sort of work within those differences, so that we can make the best of our skills and our ministries, and also be the best that we can for Yarram. And that's frustrating. I mean, I'm constantly being challenged and frustrated by this woman.
I'm like a Canaanite woman. I really responded. But no, we were able to do church for about 6 weeks. Yeah. And one of the ladies at the end of the service the other week, she came up, she said, I'm really enjoying having you, the two different sides. Yeah. She said, I'm thoroughly enjoying that. So the challenge for both of us is to be ourselves. Yeah. It's a bit like that story today, for Jesus to be Jesus and the Canaanite woman to be the Canaanite woman, and that way other people experience the differences of God, if I can say that. So if it's a word, I always make up words, but you know, and they can see that it's okay to be yourself. Yeah. You know, and so we've been having some very interesting conversations.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah. But you're modelling something really important, I think, you know, which is a great gift to not only the parish but to the diocese. And I think it's a wonderful story, and it's a first, as I understand it, for Gippsland to have a husband and wife team jointly in the incumbency, which is wonderful. So well done, you guys.
Yes, thank you.
Congratulations.
And we're enjoying it.
Yeah,
they're a good bunch.
Yeah, absolutely. I know they're lovely having you there. Yeah. And in another almost first, I think you're one of the early priests under the new legislation that we passed and synod last year, whereby you know, under certain conditions, clergy who've retired, as it were, can come back into fully licensed positions in the life of the church, and it's been great to be able to kind of use that legislation to make this possible. What do you think the blessings of that have been for you, and what do you think the gift is for the church in that possibility?
I think for us, I think a lot of it, you've been there and done that in some ways, but I think we don't have to worry about finances, and we don't have to worry about that, because we are independent in a sense financially if we chose to be. So I think there's a freedom in that, and we're not having to I think as you get older, you don't worry about second guessing people anymore. You just allow it to flow out.
Yeah.
I think you're who you are, and I think for me, having the wealth of, coming from working at Monash and Anglican as a chaplain, and I bring all that into that space.
Yeah.
And Tony brings teacher and long-term clergy person into that space and World Church. So I think it's a real value, isn't it, to them?
Yeah.
So what would you
That
say?
wealth of life experience and knowing yourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago there was a saying going around that 60 is the new 50 or something around that sort of thing. And so there's a sense within me, having retired just prior to 65, that was still young.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot that we can be doing.
Absolutely.
And I often wonder and sit and think, well, if I wasn't in ministry, well, what would I be doing, considering I'm sort of still reasonably active?
Yes.
And so, for me, there's a joy to come back to work,
Yes.
to be able to bluntly fill in my days for a little bit. At least I know what I'm going to be doing, 2 or 3 days a week. And it's that sort of time of just drifting into, well, not drifting, but progressing into retirement without having suddenly going there. And I think that's valuable. I think we need to learn what we're going to do in our spare time as we come to retirement.
Yes.
And if this is a positive way of doing that, just to slowly knock back the hours and then learn to fill those extra hours with something else, so that when I am old and doddery, I can do something. I've got something to do with the time rather than twiddle the thumbs.
Yeah. And to be able to give back in that process all that experience, back to the life and work of the church. I think it's wonderful for us. Yeah.
And for us, like we had this year planned. I mean, we were going to travel. Work wasn't even on the agenda, was it? And God knew we couldn't travel. But when you asked us to consider it on the second interview for our wedding, Tony sat bolt upright. I thought, oh, we're gone.
So you got you the weak moment.
You did. But I think, as when I first was ordained, because I was ordained later, what I often used to ask for and press is, when we have clergy conference and clergy retreats, we did not allow the retired to join us. And to me, they bring a wealth of information, a wealth of, and so that's what wisdom, and John Grace, who was just an amazing man. I mean, I was lucky to have him in the parish at Curramborough, and what value he gave to my ministry was amazing. And I thought, why should I just be the receiver of this? A lot of other people should be.
Yeah.
So I think now we are beginning to value the elders of the church.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. Yeah, that's right. We're richly blessed here in Gippsland in that respect. Wonderful cohort of so-called retired clergy who are among the busiest people I've ever met. Which is great. Yeah. One of the other strings to your bow is as chaplains, again jointly to the lay readers of the diocese, along with Dean Spalding, who's been exercising ministry with you in that space. And Gippsland, I think, has a wonderfully rich history of lay readership. And if you look back to the pioneering days in the 1880s, the early days of settlement, and the railway coming through and everything, the Gippsland, the Forest Mission and all of that, the lay readers were really at the forefront of that work and that outreach. And it's lovely, it's almost a sense of the wheel turning. We've got this wonderful group of some 60-odd lay readers, who are really engaged and doing wonderful ministry for us in their parishes and other settings. Tell us what you value most about that ministry of kind of companionship and discernment, walking alongside those guys and equipping them for their work.
Well, for us it began 10 years ago, and as we planned the days for the lay readers, that's when we started having those conversations about what the lay readers require. But what do we value? We just value their passion. We value their their willingness to step out.
Yeah.
We value just the way, in some ways, they are, you know, because we have this structure in the Anglican Church, they're like the lay deacons in a sense, you know, and they do feel the heartbeat of the community. And now we get together like once a year with our conference, and now I think last year would have had 100% attendance except for people who couldn't come because they're overseas. So they're connecting as a group now, and it's really a blessing for the diocese. But also, you have, by your input and your willingness to be alongside us, has really given the lay readers a real sense of, our ministry is appreciated. And so thank you for that.
Oh no, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
I think it's hugely important for us, and it is a joy, as you say, to see them flourishing and really taking up that sense of vocation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you move on to ordination, I mean, like I like the whole idea that when somebody goes onto a roster as a reader, hopefully some will continue through and become liturgical assistants and all that, and slowly work their way into ordination. So, and that's how I see people maturing and growing.
Yeah, it allows that longitudinal sort of journey of discernment, doesn't it, over time? Yeah. What about you, Tony? What are the things that you've really taken from that work?
Oh, personally, I've taken the challenge that we've had to arrange training days that have forced me to look at other material, because that's part of my philosophy, is that we need to be broadening their theology and their understanding for their own ministry. And so we've had some book reviews, and I think the last one was Red Alert, which I know has really challenged a lot of them, and a lot of them have really come on board with that. Some of the ideas that are in that, and certainly it's been part of Jenny's and my philosophy that part of the day is some sort of theological development for themselves, rather than just, well, how do you read a psalm or something like that? And because, as far as I'm concerned, we need to be training them, developing them, and
equipping them for that,
and building them up. And when they are aware of other points of view, I'm hoping that it will challenge them and perhaps change them as they adapt or take on board those sorts of things. So, so it was, I'm passive. Plus the fact the feedback we're getting from them, particularly this year with COVID. I mean, they're on fire. The ones I've spoken to, they're on fire because they're expressing quite openly that now we're being church, which sort of gives me a whole sort of opportunity to reflect on, well, how do we be church when we can't be church?
That's right.
And it's just lovely. It's okay. We're perhaps getting back to basics now, which would be a good thing.
And I think the other thing we've been doing is listening. We're asking them what they need instead of presuming. So what do you need? And then the challenge we have is the diversity of the Gippsland Diocese. So you've got lay readers who are all exercising their ministry differently within their parishes. Some are, and have been during vacancies, their role changes. So that's the challenge that we have, is being able to manage and balance the differences across the diocese.
That's right, and to let 1,000 flowers bloom.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Vive la différence, I say. What would you say, Tony and Jenny, to people who might be feeling those first stirrings of a calling or a vocation to lay readership and asking the question of what God might be doing in their lives? How would you encourage them to explore that?
I go back to my own story, where I moved into a new parish soon after a new vicar came into the parish and said, well, he wants to get some lay readers formed. I had no idea what a lay reader was, but I just knew this is what I had to do.
Yeah.
And so I went for it, and here I am now. There was that part of that discerning process. I mean, I've been reading in church for a long time, but this was a new step. So liturgical assistant, then sort of having a few weak attempts at preaching and so forth. But it was just part of the process.
Yeah.
And you know, if you think you've got this stirring within you, then go for it. I'm not saying you're going to be a priest. You might be, but the point is just go for it, because for me it's been a rich development for me.
And for those who haven't been in church for a while, thinking, oh well, should I be? A little bit before we talked about barriers, you know, don't listen to those negative thoughts in yourself. Just say, well, I'll give it a go. And, you know, you're better off to step out and try. And the things that are available too is, you know, speak to your priest.
Yeah.
And then talk to us. You're quite welcome to come along to a lay reader day. You don't have to be a lay reader. So it needs to be more open so that people can check out and see if this is what you really want to be. Talk to other lay readers.
Yeah.
But God calls you in as a person you are uniquely, and you'll bring gifts to your lay readership ministry, and you will enrich everybody for that. And because you're licensed, you are able to take a service without one of us common people around, and you're able to preach.
Yes.
And just like that Canaanite woman, she saw something and she cried out. Yeah. And that's a challenge, I think, for us all when we have God tapping us about a ministry.
Yeah.
And the point is, I think one of the things that we were quite taken by with in July's TMA was the revitalisation article at Garden Vale, and one of the 12 points there was, you know, learn to fail gloriously, you know. So you know, just go in and have a go. So often we hang back because we don't think we're good enough, and I was part of that. We don't think that we've, you know, we want to be very certain that this is where it is. But for me, I'm only going to find out if I dip my toe in the water, and so dip your toe in the water and see where it leads you.
And perhaps
talk to others.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk to others.
Talk to others. Yeah. Perhaps that thing about being prepared to fail gloriously or to let things fall is part of what we're learning again in COVID. You know, you talked about having to adapt and some of the red alert stuff. I mean, you guys began, I think the 15th of April was the day you started in the middle of the first wave of the pandemic. Churches closed, etc., etc. And you, as new priest in charge, had to start to build community and form relationships without any of the usual ways of being church. How did you go about that?
Well, no induction. We just arrive and we sit in. You know, nobody's welcomed us. We have none of the norm around us.
Exactly.
The only thing we have is a database. And you know what church databases are like. Yeah, they can be up to date or they can be rather out of date. So we decided we split the database, and there was 110 households, and we rang them all.
Wow.
Now we couldn't have done that if we'd gone in and had the big whatever. We would have been caught up being this and being that and being what's expected of us. So we had to sit with our phones and ring. So, we actually found it a bit of a blessing, didn't we?
Yeah, but we've also made contact with a whole lot of other community organisations that we probably wouldn't have done in the same amount of time. We've contacted schools, we've contacted some of the businesses, we've contacted obviously the funeral directors, just gone around and introduced ourselves, which normally I haven't done haven't been able to because of the other things were upon me. So we had to find things to do. So we've gone out into the community and made connections with them. Some of the community organisations we've also been in touch with, and now the difficulty now is
we're back.
following up.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're going to have to do that. And see what we can do with that here.
And we've got to speak to VCAL kids.
Yeah, right.
We went and had a talk, and that's and that was really good. So that when we were given a couple of food packages, we actually rang the coordinator of the program and said we had these 2 boxes of food, and so we were able to give it to one of the girls who lives on her own in a little flat, and to another family who would normally fall out of the gaps.
Yeah.
You know, they wouldn't be in that normal space to get help. So yeah, we feel that we've been very blessed in the sense, and then getting back and doing services together, you know, in face to face, and that challenge of spacing and we found it good. The parish councils met more in, I think, the 6 months or the 16 weeks we've been there than they probably in a couple of years, but we have strong connections because I think we've had time to do it.
Yeah. So a reordering of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Different set of priorities.
We were joking, we've often thought about inductions and how do you do them, as we know we're talking, and I think this is more real in a sense. We're doing probably our 3 or 4, maybe 6 month trial and connected with the community so that when we are inducted, we're going to have this big party.
Yeah, you're not being sort of helicopter.
That's right. But you know, because we can often lose that sense of community in inductions because we're sort of imposed on these people, and who are they and what do they mean, whereas now they've got to know us. Yeah. So when they welcome us in warts and all.
Yeah,
and so I think that's amazing. So COVID for us has been, well, amongst its challenges, there's been lots of blessings.
Yeah, it's been really positive, I think.
Yeah, it has, absolutely, yeah.
Do you hope that we'll continue to do some things differently post-COVID, assuming there is a post-COVID world, whatever that will look like?
I think this second wave, I think the first wave, and then we got back to church and we're just thinking when we get back. And I think now this second wave has thrown that. And I think when will we get back? And so now we are challenged. As I said a couple of weeks ago in church, we can't go back. And we sort of put plans in place in case we had lockdown again, which we did. And so now, how do we go forward? How do we go forward? And that's going to be the challenge for us as clergy, because like COVID's a bit like the Canaanite woman in a sense. Is just challenging us and saying, come on guys, and are we able to hear the heartbeat? I often say, when people say, oh, the community are not interested in us, you know, the church is irrelevant. And I say, but they come for baptisms, weddings and funerals. Some of the most important or their precious moments in their lives. And they have other options now. So why do they choose to come to us? And I think sometimes they're like the Canaanite woman. They're coming because they recognise we've got something. And I think the COVID now is going to challenge us. How do we deal with mental illness, isolation? How do we deal with all this?
Yeah, it was interesting. We had a Zoom catch-up for the clergy last week that you were both part of, and it was interesting to hear. We were talking about, you know, what are the kind of bright spots and what are some of the things we're worried about. And it's interesting how often COVID came up as an opportunity, as well as, of course, a huge challenge and you know, very, very problematic in terms of the risk for vulnerable people. But an opportunity for churches to reconnect. And one of the things that we were worried about as a cohort was the risk of just going back to the way things were afterwards and not taking some of the learnings out of this. So it bears out what you're saying about, you know, we can't just go back.
I think one of the interesting things is that I've been pondering for a little while is that we say that we need to change and look at parish profiles all across
Christendom.
All across Christendom, saying we need to change, we want something that's going to change us, but as soon as you try to do it, you know, the plough things go in and we just comes to a thudding stop and nothing seems to get done Whereas what I think COVID has done is that it's forced us to change. There's a reason for why we have to change. You know, what's the phrase? Necessity is the mother of invention, or something. And I'm really hoping that post-COVID, that we've learned the fact that some of the things that we've taken for granted are perhaps probably not as important as we think they were. And that's what I'm hoping. As I said the other week in church, looking at some of our traditions that we've got. I mean, the church hasn't fallen in because women aren't wearing hats and gloves anymore, or changed the music, or a whole range of other things that have changed. So, what's our fear of it of changing now?
I always say that tradition is the church's technical term for change.
Yes, that's right. But there's the other thing is, I think it's forced us to think beyond the Sunday worship. See, my thing is that, and Dave knows this well, because we used to say, how arrogant are we really to say to this, our community, sorry, but you only come and meet Jesus on this hour on a Sunday, once a week. I mean, seriously.
Too bad if your shift work.
That's right, a nurse, you've got...
Hospitality.
You're a carer. And to me, I think, and that's what we set up, and we've set that up. And say, now, how do we be church out there? We've got a Bible study by Zoom. It'll probably continue by Zoom. But this is our opportunity to disciple. We've got a chance now to do some discipling, to hone in on a few people and to actually disciple them. Our lay readers, we meet them by Zoom every 3 months or something now. And it's a chance for us to get together, chew the fat, as I would say. But in this is a discipling. And in some ways, people are freer because they can be in their pyjamas. They don't have to go out. They can have a meal, especially in winter in Gippsland. And so I think we still, and our language even the last 5 minutes has been around the Sunday worship. And we need to change that. And that's what Guild Can challenges us with. It's not just about Sunday, because too many people are excluded for a multitude of reasons. And but it's the only time you can come and meet Jesus. Tongue in cheek, I'm saying.
Well, Tony and Jenny, thank you so much for being severally and together the Canaanite woman for us today, for preaching the gospel to us, and for participating in the worship earlier this morning, for all that you do for our lay readers, for all that you're doing for the good people of the Parish of Yarram, and what you bring to our diocese with your wealth of experience and your very different but wonderfully integrated journeys and gifts. And bless you in that, and thank you both again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.